My name is Jeff Owens, Director of WEIU. My co-host is Gerard Singleton.
Good to be here, Jeff.
And today we're talking all things Master Gardeners. We have Jack Ingram here. Welcome, Jack.
Pleased to be here as well.
Jack, we're going to have you move that mic even closer to you, my friend. And Diana Glosser making another appearance.
Hey, welcome. I'm glad to be back.
And we're going to pull that microphone a little closer to you as well.
A little closer.
Yep.
I'm not speaking again. All right.
So let's talk all things Master Gardeners. I guess we always start off with people who don't know what the program is. So could both of you or one of you describe a little bit what the Master Gardeners program is?
Jack is our current president, so I'm going to turn that over to him.
Okay. Well, what we're talking about today really is our Master Gardener plant sale. And this is our spring event that to provide garden plants and house plants and really what we're about more than anything is information and some education about plant variety, optimal growing conditions, and how to use these things in the right application. So, in addition to flowers and vegetables, we also have all these extra bits and pieces. We call it a picker's paradise area. So that's a lot of fun for people that come out and take a look at things. We've been very fortunate that we've been able to partner with Sarah Bush Lincoln Health Center, and there's a greenhouse there as well. And so we've been able to take and go from starting seeds to, as a matter of fact, I just came from the greenhouse a little while ago as we're transplanting seeds to the next size pots so that we're ready for this sale. And we're able to nurture these plants into something that's pretty amazing.
Dan, you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say Master Gardeners are nationally celebrating their 50th anniversary, and locally we celebrated our 30th last year.
Nice.
And Master Gardeners are trained volunteers from the University of Illinois to help fill that gap between their educators and that demand for public information.
Nice. Well, last time I talked to you was obviously a little bit colder outside.
It was.
And so I want to ask, how are you feeling now that it's spring and you all get to kind of, no pun intended, spring into action?
Well, I went out this morning to check ground temperature. So at my house, it's about 52 degrees, so almost warm enough to plant.
It's getting there.
So what is warm enough to plant? That would be the...
We usually recommend at least 50 degrees.
Okay.
And certainly not frosting at night. But my rule of thumb is by Mother's Day, I know I'm going to be perfectly safe, but with our warming trend worldwide, we know that that's moved up a week or so.
Okay.
So we're
And
getting
Mother's
right
Day
close.
is, what, May 11th this year?
May 11th, because our plant sale is the day before.
Okay.
And-
Well, let's talk about the plant sale, what people can expect and what they can get and with the when, why, and all that stuff.
Well, the plant sale will be at Lytle Park, along with their Garden Fest activity, which kicks off the farmers market for Lytle Park, and we'll have a booth from 9 to noon, along with other vendors as well. So it should be a great event. And what they can find that day, Jack, you want to talk about specific plants?
Well, we've got some varieties of plants. We've got vegetables this year. We're going to have tomatoes and peppers, all varieties that they can get. We also have some limited pollinator-friendly plants and even some house plants. As I've looked around our greenhouse today, we've got some really neat-looking house plants potted and ready to go that will be available as well.
I'm going to ask what a pollinator-friendly plant is. So for the people who have no clue, which I fall into that category some.
Well, we try not to get these exotics, but it's for the area. Some plants that are more naturalized, something that is the bees and the things that are helping pollinate other plants around us really like these types of flowering plants.
And those could include Monarda, ones you're probably familiar with, coneflower, Rudbeckia, are some of the ones, and they are going to send down a very deep root systems, and they will come back year after year.
Another side, I was actually going to get along those lines. Another side effect of it being warmer is that a lot of those pollinators are coming out. Are there any that are either really helpful or even some that are detrimental? Because I know there's a cicada brood that's supposed to be emerging, not here in Illinois, but in adjacent states like Indiana, some Indiana counties, and things like that. Is there anything that you got to look out for?
We had a cicada brood out. They just emerged everywhere last year.
Yeah.
So we're, at least fortunately, we are beyond that. The pollinator plants will tend to survive that just a little better. yes, they are a little more woody. Cicadas like those very tender leaves and very tender stems. So they tend to be a little more hardy. They're also tend to be more drought resistant and tolerate a poorer soil more easily than like some of the annuals like geraniums and tulips and those things.
Jack, Diane has been on a lot of times, and a lot of people know her from being around here. Since it's your first time here on Issues Net, just give us a little bit of your background, education, and what got you kind of into gardening and planting.
Okay. Well, I'm actually a fairly new master gardener and a master naturalist by training, but that's not always been me. I'm actually an engineer by training, and I do all things electrical. My day job is I work for Ameren Utilities, soon to retire, but this is my retirement project, right? I've always loved to touch all things green and propagate new plants and just in my yard at my home, I've got almost 30 different tree varieties, for instance.
Holy cow.
And raised beds and all sorts of plants going on. So this is a perfect fit for me, just to be able to get into that greenhouse and go from seed to plant to sale to, and it's all, we're so much about the education too. I came to be a master gardener because I wanted to be around the really smart people with green thumbs, and that's who I've met, and we find out that every one of our members has a niche. They know something really valuable, and maybe their whole life they've done this type of plant, or they've done this type of propagation. They've done something, and so that's what we're learning from. And even our plant sale, when we do that, those folks are going to be there. They're going to be the ones that are going to be milling around all morning, and you can ask questions. You can say, where does this plant fit? What do I do if this happens?
What's the best way to plant tomato plants? I believe is the most often asked question. If we were using a little data.
Like?
What does it taste like? And we have done tomato tastings. We do a variety of educational programs. I'm doing one tomorrow on composting for homeschoolers. Jack is doing one for adults on, you want to talk about?
Well, Shishugi Bon. I've done some research, and something we get to do, we get to learn, and then teach.
Yeah.
And so I looked into the Japanese treatment of wood with heat to create a wood-preserved product. And so we're doing a class. It's actually this coming Saturday. I have leading a small class on that subject to do a demonstration and let people leave with this technique.
For some people, it looks like they just took a board and they burned it.
Yeah.
But it preserves it so that it will last a long time. And you can see examples of that at the Idea Garden at Sarah Bush Lincoln Health Center. And there is a Leopold bench. And a Leopold bench is one that Aldo Leopold, a great conservationist, kind of the father of conservation, he designed. So you can sit on it either direction. Forwards or backwards, very, very comfortably. And there is a post. We were awarded a People's Garden Award by USDA, and Jack created the post for that.
Nice.
For the award.
In terms of, I like how you mentioned that learning is a huge aspect of what you do. It's not just, we're the experts and we kind of like divvy out the information. A lot of it is being like, what new can I discover? Has there been anything recently that you've discovered that surprised you or that you've taken an interest in?
Well, about every day.
Fair.
I'm with these folks. I'm learning something new, and I find out. But this year's been more about the greenhouse, I think, because I've had enough involvement with that, and you would think we just put seeds in the ground and throw some water on them and it all grows. Well, that's not exactly that simple. There's some techniques to it, and different types of soil media that we're starting the seeds in, and water type, how we water and different things. So that's been, I think, my spring education has been a lot of that greenhouse.
You said you learned that most master gardeners have their own little niche. So Diana and Jack, what do you think you guys are the best at, or what is your go-to?
Personally, I think I'm a fairly good generalist.
Okay.
I get excited about all kinds of things, and like, what is your favorite garden tool? Particularly things that weren't designed to do that.
Yeah.
If you have a rose of Sharon bush, and those are ones that you make those little dolls out of, and they go everywhere, and they shoot up these little sprouty things, and they're hard to get out of the ground because her roots are at least as long as what you see above ground. And a pair of pliers, a larger, heavy-duty pair of pliers will just help you pull those out, particularly when the weather's like this and it's easy pulling. What do you?
Well, I think I'm kind of the experimental gardener.
There you go.
You know, my raised beds at my home are made from grain bin metal,
Mm.
and I've created a type of raised bed, and it's unique. You certainly can't buy this thing, and so and you know, I mentioned the number of trees in my property. I'm always looking for the unique things, and what can I bring in. I've since learned some things I shouldn't.
I mean, we all got to make mistakes, right?
Some
Yes.
things I shouldn't bring in. You know, that those there are certain things are a bit invasive that I've touched on, but yeah, I like to be that experimental guy.
Danny, you wanted to talk about how long you guys have really done some of the events that you've been doing now that you've got 35
Right.
years, here in Coles County, and then 50 years overall. So talk about some of the things that you just continuously your go-to events of the year.
I think our go-to events of the year are pretty well established now. We've been doing Spring into Gardening. That was the beginning of March, our annual conference for the public. We had a fabulous speaker who came in from Chicago. Her name's escaped me at the moment, but it may return. But she is, her business is called Kiss My Aster. And
so glad you
that
went
tells
there.
you something about her personality, but she just brings it all together. And when she has a garden shop in Lamont, and her whole thing is you find all kinds of things that you can put in your garden. And she brings pictures of everything like toilets and other things people have used, but it turns out to look pretty attractive. And particularly using those things to be repurposed. So she'll use an old suitcase and make it into a garden. I'm working on a product for the plant sale, which is an old wheelbarrow, which is past its useful life, but we can turn it into kind of a raised bed flower garden.
Okay. And the plant sale, the money that you make from the plant sale this year, does it go to a charity? Does it go back to buying new stuff? Talk about where that money
It
goes.
helps support the activities that we do. For example, we do youth gardening throughout the typical school year, and it helps purchase the supplies to do that. We want everything we do to be as hands-on as possible, so people can literally get their hands dirty. It helps primarily with supplies, but it could be we're doing something on container gardening, or we're doing something on making leaf prints into cement pieces. So you might be making footstones to go through your garden path, or you might be making a shallow rain piece for butterflies and birds.
Nice.
I'm doing one on composting, but mostly I'm composting my own stuff for examples there. But it allows you to, those things that teachers just can't live without, markers and paper and that
There you
kind
go.
of stuff. Jack, what do you want to add? Can you think of other programs? We give away seed.
We do, at our Spring into Gardening, we gave away a lot of things, and folks in the community are so generous to donate to us that we can pass that stuff on as well.
That's right.
Looking at our list a little bit, just our workshops even. We're always, as we go through the year, we're looking for things that people really want to know and want to learn.
There was a series on planting a perennial garden,
Yeah.
not pollinator, perennial.
Yeah.
And so it started with basic design, literally that on the table, designing the shape of the garden and where I'm going to put the plants, and researching some plants, getting some plant material, and then leaving with a plan to be able to do that when they go home.
Okay.
Nice.
Rob?
I was actually going to ask along that design aspect, just because it's not simply putting something in the ground, throwing water on it, and it sprouts up. You actually have to be considerate of your space and be considerate of maybe your elevation, or where is the water going to just roll down the hill when the water does come. So is there anything that you've learned recently specific to the local area that you'd be like, well, this may work for here, but here in Illinois, this is how we do it? Is there anything contingent on location?
Well, something it's funny because of where I work. Everybody has noticed the trees trimmed by Ameren.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The big tree that's got a great big notch out of it, or a great big V, or something like that. It's as simple as don't plant tall things under power lines, or too close to your home. You know, if I'm going to plant a willow tree, if I plant it next to my home, I may have a failed foundation. You know, there's a lot to know about certain plants and how they interact with things around them.
Is there anything unique about Illinois that lends itself to certain like plants being thriving here, or even some not doing as well?
I think one of the unique things that we tend to forget about Illinois is if you are driving, it's going to take you about 9 hours to drive from north to south. And in there, you're going to have different growing zones. So when you think about the things that you see in St. Louis, some of those don't do very well here because it gets too cold in the winter. Or things that do well here do very poorly up above I-80. So that has to be taken into consideration. Also, soil type. We're at the edge of the Shelbyville moraine. So we have some fantastic opportunities because you find all kinds of soils. My husband's grandmother lived on Monroe Street in Charleston in the 1600 block. She had 3 major soil types in her yard. She had clay.
I was going to say clay.
She had sandy soil, and she had this gorgeous black loam. So she because they had 14 kids, she planted things in different parts of the yard because they grew best there. Or for me, one of the things I've found is that things I planted 25 years ago when we moved to our home are now, that were in full sun, are now in partial or full shade. So we've had to shift things.
You have to adjust on the fly.
You have to
right?
adjust, and it's like, oh, I really like my plant, but it's doing so poorly, and it's like, oh, I can just get my shovel and I can move it over here. And part of it, I think, what Jack described was just being brave enough to make that trial and error.
To try,
and
yeah.
just to try it.
Yeah, to give you an idea of this diversity, because I'm from Toledo, so a little bit further south. I'm just south of that glacier that ended. You know, so I've got this dense clay and it's wet and it just doesn't dry out. And I'm in raised beds now in my garden because I could never get in until May or maybe June sometimes because I just couldn't get it to dry out, so I had to get above that.
And
Now, can you grow stuff in clay? I mean, is it possible?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You can. A lot of people amend their soil, but when you think about it, if you're trying to grow a carrot if you've had an art class in clay, that's if you do go to the raised bed with a more robust soil, you're going to get something that's 4 times the size.
Because it's not as restrictive.
Because it's not as restrictive.
I see.
And in clay, wherever that plant is, it's going to collect more moisture, so you may have more problems with rot.
I know this may be out of your wheelhouse, but there's been so many wineries that are popping up now, and they're making their own wine. Is Illinois conducive in this part of the, for the grapes and everything? Or
Absolutely. Think about Illinois history. Prior to Prohibition, Illinois was one of the largest grape/wine producers in the country.
I didn't know that.
So now we're just regaining our heritage.
That's right.
And we get to sample all the way across. And one of the things I noticed recently was a brewery wine trail right here in our area.
Nothing's out of the wheelhouse if it grows, and Diana knows about it.
I have to say,
Hey,
yeah. Return to form, so to
as
speak.
I said, I'm that generalist, and I just all of these things, the way they go together, just fascinate me.
The weather has been a little, for lack of a better way, nutty. With tremendous rain, then no rain, then tremendous rain. Is it now that we're close to planting season and harvest season, or for farmers and for gardeners, where we stand right now with the amount of rain we've had?
Well, I think sometimes we do get a little rushed.
Yep.
We got to be patient because even though that first warm day comes out and that just feels like, man, this is spring, it's really not quite there yet. This earlier growing zone is teasing us a little bit, I think, because the mushrooms are just now. If you've been watching the Facebook
pictures
posts,
are coming.
man, they're flowing out of the ground, and these nice thunderstorms that we've been having, the lightning, it's creating the nitrogen up in the rainwater, and it falls down. All of a sudden, your yard's green.
Yeah, I've noticed the
And
vibrancy
the mushrooms
change.
out of the
Yeah.
ground, it goes hand in hand, and we have a tendency to want to make that sooner.
So we should still wait pretty much for at least
Don't rush.
for another couple of weeks. You think?
Another couple weeks, I think
Yeah.
it should be safe. Patience is the most difficult thing, I think. I did, Kathy Hummel has talked many times about the winter sowing and doing things in the milk jugs and leaving them outside. And I did cardinal flower and forget-me-nots. And they're about this tall now. And, they're ready to be exposed to more sunlight. So.
Okay.
But I'm not getting in a hurry yet.
Nice. Jack, being that you repurpose material for your raised beds, I wanted to ask kind of how do you navigate the economic aspect of getting into more of the hands-on gardening? So like making those raised beds or maybe sourcing the material for them and not going to like the department store and spending $400 or $500.
And that's the problem. You can. Everything is so expensive right now, but there's so many things around. In my raised beds, I ended up using grain bin metal, which is available used in the area. People are taking them down all over the place. But we know and we've learned from the science of things, to avoid the green treated lumbers, the things that have these chemicals in them and different things. So we don't just grab anything. We make sure that we, from a science perspective, it's not going to harm the food that we're going to eat or contaminate something. But there's so much materials that just is discarded every day that can be used.
Right.
For your average everyday gardener, who just is going to have a few plants, maybe some vegetables out there. What is the average hours per week that they need really to tend to their garden to make it really viable?
Depending on the size.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what soil you're starting with. If I grew up deep tilling, for instance, and always went out and tilled, and I didn't know. All I was doing was planting weed seeds. And so it sits there for a week and a half, and then all of a sudden I've got this lush green patch that I didn't plant. So some techniques help that, learning to not till, to pull the weeds and to solarize by putting some plastic down and heating the ground and killing the seeds instead of getting them to sprout. There are techniques that really do help with that timing because you can put a lot of effort into a garden. And it discourages people really fast if they find out all of a sudden they've got to be out there every single night pulling
And
these
water.
weeds. And water and costs and fertilizer.
And I assume you want to avoid using chemicals, right, for stuff like that.
We do.
As much as possible.
As much as possible because, where I live, I have honeysuckle everywhere. So I'm always fighting that. But the reality with honeysuckle is if you can't pull it, then you have to treat it.
Okay.
But you're always careful with the mix and how it's used.
We're talking to Master Gardeners Jack Ingram and Diana Gloucester today on Issues and Attitudes. Someone who wants to get involved in your program is interested in becoming a Master Gardener. Can you give them the best way to start?
I'll let you take this one.
Well, you can talk to a Master Gardener if you see somebody in the shirts like we have on, or you're at an event or you know somebody. Please talk to them. They can tell you we try to make it for everybody with different interests, with different abilities. Some of our members are older and they're not able to, work in the gardens or that kind of thing, but they do great programming or they do support things to help someone doing programming. We do have the training, and to check if you just search Coles County Master Gardeners, even though we're bigger than Coles County.
Yeah, 5 counties now, right?
5 counties.
Yeah.
If you just search Coles County Master Gardeners, it'll get you to the webpage for the local extension office. And there you can find out about Master Gardener training. One of the real benefits of COVID was that a lot of things became available online for being web-based. So for me, I had to wait till I retired to become a Master Gardener because I couldn't commit every Tuesday to the training.
To physically meet.
But now there's a hybrid that allows that a little better. There's totally online, and the training is accessible whether you become a Master Gardener or not. And so the best thing to do is to check the current dates with the website.
Okay. We have a few minutes left. Gerard, anything else you want to ask?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. We kind of touched on like the gardening tools, and you mentioned how your favorite was kind of that big and heavy duty pliers for pulling those weeds. Jack, would you have any particular tool, or even just a resource, even if it's like an almanac or something for reference that helps you out that you just find invaluable?
Well, tools, there are just so many to start with. As simple as what do I pull weeds with, and everybody's got a gadget now. And I can tell you that it's hard to beat a hoe,
True.
and it's hard to beat just some basic hand tools, and we really stress, especially as folks get older, to think about ergonomics and bending and getting the right tool that puts you in a good body position so that you're working in your power zone and you're not stressing your back and knees and all of these things. So I think that's the most important, is to find that. If you can't raise the bed up and you have to go down, find that rolling chair, find that kneeling pad, find those things that really make it so that you can do that for a lot of years.
That's a good. Any other advice with the last couple of minutes you want to give for people out there that are thinking about becoming a gardener, or thinking about maybe taking the next step?
Don't be afraid. If you plant it and it dies, it's okay.
Start
It really
small.
is. Yeah. Don't hesitate to do it. Give it a try. So much that you can plant, you can eat, and with all the chemicals that are being used to mass produce vegetables and different things, it's just seems so much better when it's out of you
Know when it's coming from.
Well, and with prices going up in all the grocery stores right now, I mean, you could also save some
Yes.
money by having
It's viable.
tomatoes and whatever else that you love out of your garden.
You could start with 3 buckets. They need a hole in the bottom, so excess water will drain out. But you could do a tomato plant, a pepper plant, and in the third one, do a mix of herbs. You could do basil and cilantro, and then you can do Italian and Mexican, bruschetta or salsa.
Nice.
Now we're all
And-
hungry.
Yeah, and now it's lunchtime. And
I'm about to say it's about
everybody's hungry.
lunchtime. My final question would be surrounding waste. So things like composting. I know there's a lot of repurposing that goes on with gardening. Could you touch on that a little bit, and how people should be like, okay, what do I need to throw away, and what can be repurposed to kind of help another one of my projects?
Well, about anything green that you're cutting and trimming and producing is compostable, right? We try to avoid burning, because that just creates the ash and takes away that whole soil property. But get that pile started. There's a lot of good articles. We have a lot of good information go on our website. There's a lot of good things that we teach about that, but it creates a really good something that you would have to buy otherwise,
Right.
which is that soil.
Is there anything you suggest not to grow here in Central Illinois? Is there just something that's just bad for the land? He drinks too much water or something? Is there
Or to take too much time, or
Yeah.
just not good for the effort?
I can't think of anything.
Well, there are a few invasives.
Okay.
Keep away from those. Burning bush, which you can go and buy at the garden store right now. We really shouldn't plant those. That there are a few things that are out there, but as a general rule, if you can buy it, it's okay.
favorite vegetable to grow, Jack?
I'm a tomato guy.
Diana?
I'm working on herbs this year.
Favorite flower you have to have in your garden? Or flowers, I guess.
Oh, my.
We're about out of time, so.
Yeah,
Poppies.
poppies. I'm doing moonflowers this year.
Oh,
It's not
I've
a
got
great one, but
moonflowers
it's
started.
something I've been intrigued with.
Yes,
Night bloomers.
night bloomers.
Sunflower seeds, Jack, or sunflowers?
I do sunflowers, except the deer love them.
I'm gonna say, yeah, the
So,
pest
they
love
get
them
their
too.
heads bit off.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. We are
Thank you.
WEIU.